We're joined on INSEAD Knowledge by Henrich Greve. You're the co-author of a paper called Undeserved Loss, the Spread of Legitimacy Loss to Innocent Organizations. Essentially, it's about how scandals of one particular company can affect others in the same sort of industry. Why did you look at Scandia in particular?
Well, it was a good example of a scandal that could potentially affect other firms and that also took place in a fairly clean environment. I mean, this was during a period where certainly in Sweden there weren't any shadow of suspicion on what mutual fund providers were doing. So Scandia stood out. Also, it's clean also in the second sense that the mutual fund provider owned by Scandia didn't have a scandal. It was actually the mother company that had one, and was very focused on a small set of executives who were enriching themselves through the pension plan and through some deals with cheap apartments.
And it was accused of wrongdoing, although it was cleared on many of the counts, but it did attract a lot of negative press coverage.
Yes, there was an issue of how much of it was just inappropriate and how much of it was actually illegal. And at the end of some rounds in the courts, it was mostly found to be inappropriate and scandalous, but not actually illegal.
So in this paper, you basically found that scandals affecting this one company did have an impact on mutual fund companies.
Exactly, and the reason for doing that is that we currently know some things with a fair degree of precision, which is that scandals negatively impact the company in which they occur, and that has been proven over and over again. And the impact can be really large. I mean, even in cases where it's actually illegal behavior and it triggers fines, if you look at the economic impact of the scandal through other means such as customers reacting and so on, it's substantially greater than the fine.
In terms of methodology, you analysed the media coverage as to whether it was negative, positive, but you also then looked at mutual fund returns. Why did you take that approach rather than look at stock prices?
So we were interested in exactly how customers reacted to the scandal, which is really the ones that are perhaps most important in terms of reacting to the reputation of a firm, and also in a way they make judgments about a firm, about the product of a firm, as well as more general ideas about is this somebody we want to deal with as a transaction partner. Whereas shareholders, really, as owners, you can understand that if there is a scandal that actually involves management extracting funds, there's not only the reputational issue, there's also a question of whether the managers are on their side. Really, so the separation is cleaner in the case of customers, and of course a firm deals with many more customers, so it really gets to a very broad segment of the population, particularly in the case of Scandia, because these were customers who owned mutual funds through the Swedish pension plan, the public one, and so it literally gives a cross-section of how the Swedish population thought about Scandia and how they reacted to this press coverage of the scandals.
So among the main findings, you did find that the contagion did spread?
Yes, we did find that, and it's really two steps beyond what we know already. I mean, the first step is that you have in an insurance company, which was the mother company of this mutual fund company, you have a scandal by a very limited set of managers, and this somehow spreads to the mutual fund subsidiary, which is already more than we know. I mean, it shows that people are willing to follow the name Scandia to another company also named Scandia in the same corporate structure. But then there is step number 2 from that, which is that, okay, so this mutual fund company is owned by an insurance company. Now because of the Scandia scandal, also other insurance companies and their mutual fund subsidiaries are under suspicion, which is a fairly radical way of a scandal spreading. I mean, they really are willing to make a lot of assumptions about how similarities of companies might say something about who are good transaction partners.
And there was one interesting point, was that even though the contagion did spread, it did seem to be a sort of temporary phenomenon.
Well, that's what we're now looking at, how quickly do they recover. We still don't have those results yet, but there is recovery, we know that, and the recovery is surprisingly slow. So even the recovery of Scandia itself, which was the one that had the biggest dip, and which should rebound faster because they got rid of all the managers who were involved, and they now are again quite clean and also have new owners. In spite of that, there's a substantial lagged effect of the scandals.
How typical would you say the Scandia case is?
It's hard to tell because the unique part of it is that you have mutual fund providers that are owned by firms in a number of different industries, and so the link through ownership is a fairly unique feature of this. So in how many industries do you have these categories of insurers take part, and now one insurer does something bad, so we are suspicious of them, and maybe we go to the banks instead. This is somewhat unusual. Now, the idea itself of things spreading beyond the boundaries of the firm that has a scandal, we think is very general. And we also showed, and this is something that's probably true in any industry, that if you're of similar size as the perpetrator, if you're of high quality before the scandal hits, I mean, these are things that makes you especially at risk of being hit by a scandal.
We use the analogy on INSEAD Knowledge about the bad apple. How appropriate is that analogy?
Yes, I mean, customers clearly looked at the one bad apple among the apples, the insurance companies, and decided to have an orange. So they went for independent mutual fund providers. In some cases, they went for banks or for foreign mutual fund providers. Or we also looked at specific other firms, what the effects were, and in some cases, a small firm would have its transactions go up 2.5% or more as a result of this, whereas a large insurance company, so one similar to Scandia, things would go down by 2.5%. And that's assets under management declining or increasing over a fairly short period of time, so it's fairly dramatic.
One of the implications of this paper seems to be that companies really should pay a lot of attention to reputation management.
It really has one fairly radical implication, which is that you have to think about reputation recovery even if you don't anticipate that there'll ever be a problem with your own behaviors hurting the reputation, because the reputation can also be hurt by what a similar firm might be doing. Now we used to think of reputation recovery as something that would be limited to cases where there's actual wrongdoing. But in this case, there were insurance firms that had done absolutely nothing wrong. Their reputation was hurt by Scandia. There were also large banks, also similar in size to Scandia, that were hurt because of the actions. And they all now need to think about how to recover their reputations. And it clearly can't be by saying that we did nothing wrong. That's obvious.
So what can you do in that sort of situation?
Well, they really have to separate themselves, sever the association between themselves and Scandia, because the whole thing comes from the grouping of firms together. You're similar to Scandia, and so you're under suspicion as a result of what they did.
INSEAD Professor Henrich Greve, co-author of Undeserved Loss, the Spread of Legitimacy Loss to Innocent Organizations, in response to reported corporate deviance. Thanks for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you so much.